So what you see right now is the agenda I brought for this talk on applying Agile development practice in distributed teams. And for the very first thing that I want to do is clarify the context for this talk. So hopefully you know that this is what you are interested in or not. And following that, I want to go over the practices listed. So we're starting with pair programming, testing, then collective ownership, refactoring, continuous integration, and continuous improvement. I took those practices because for me, these are like the core Agile development practices. The emphasis is on development, so I'm not talking about anything that's more on maybe management or collaboration or whatever perspective. So it's really the focus on development here. So let's start with looking into the context. The first thing is that my idea is, or my hope, let's put it this way, my hope is that you understand the purpose, the impact, and the application of Agile development practices in distributed teams. So that's also the way how I will look or examine all those different development practices by looking what's the original purpose. So why is this an Agile development practice? So why is it in the Agile field, and what does it do to development? Then what's the impact, especially applied in a distributed setting, and then how can you actually apply it? And sometimes maybe there is nothing different from in a local setting, but still I think it's important to be clear where are differences, and maybe also the purpose might shift in some cases. Well, the ground or the foundation for all of this is actually the Agile Manifesto. And don't worry, I will not go into details of the Agile Manifesto. I only want to point out this 12 principles. Oh, by the way, very often if people refer to the manifesto, they only have the values in their mind, where it says, start with the first one, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Yet there's more to it. It's not only those values, there are also 12 principles, and you see the URL for the principles also on the slide, so agilemanifesto.org/principles. And the one I'm focusing at today is the one that says continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. So this is the principle that's motivating all development practices, actually. And therefore, it's the kind of the foundation of what we are doing today here. The last belief that I want to clarify before we dive into the development practices is what we are actually talking about if we are talking about distributed teams or developing in a distributed or global setting. The way it is differentiated is actually by talking about, on the one hand, distributed teams. And the distributed teams, in case you see the slides, what I hope most of you do, is the teams that are within a solid circle. What I mean with this is you have, for example, two teams, but they're residing at different locations, but they are working together on the same system. So if you will, these are two teams where each of the teams is actually co-located, but the two teams are not co-located. So people are sitting together in one location. For example, there's one team, let's say, in the Bay Area, and another one is sitting in Bangalore. But these are two teams working together, and that's called distributed teams. Then there's this other thing, which is called dispersed team, or you could also have several of those. And the dispersed team is a team where the team members are actually sitting at different locations. So if I use the similar example, you will have maybe 3 people sitting in the Bay Area, 2 in Bangalore, and 2 in Ireland, just like any kind of example. So Dispersed means the team is distributed in itself, whereas a distributed team is actually never like a team, it's always more than one because the members are co-located. In both cases, if we are working in an agile way, and that's what I'm assuming here, is on one hand, everyone contributes to the same system, to the same project or product, and on the other hand, for each of the team, it's true that they are feature teams, so they are aiming for implementing complete features, or if we have broken them further down, then it's in the sense they are working on completing a story. So it's not that if I use the first example with the distributed teams, that, for example, the team in the Bay Area would develop the code and the team in Bangalore would write the test, or that the same setting but other example, that in Bangalore they would do like the database stuff, and in the Bay Area they do the business logic and the UI. So that's not what's meant by a feature team. A feature team means always that the whole team is working on a whole story, and there's no split through a story or a feature. If you're speaking of a more constrained thing, there's no split through that business functionality when we talk to who's implementing it. So it's always done by a single team, no matter where it's residing. So, and also no matter if we talk about a dispersed or distributed team. So for the context, so this is what we are talking about now. If we focus on development practices, then actually the most interesting part is not so much the distributed teams, but we are talking about a dispersed team, so where the members are really distributed, which means then all the development practices really, well, not all, but most of them are becoming a challenge. Whereas if you are talking about distributed teams, the members are co-located, so it's quite the same as if all of the teams would reside on the same location. Okay, so again, about a team where the members are not sitting at the same location, but the team is focusing on completing a feature. I understand the question, but maybe you want to clarify, and I move on. Yeah, right. Now I understand the question. Yeah, that's exactly true. So I want to cover dispersed teams only because the other thing is, so distributed teams is not the big challenge here. Okay, so let's move on into the first development practice, pair programming. And keep in mind, we talk about dispersed teams here. First of all, as I mentioned before, the way I want to look at the different development practices is, first of all, looking at what's actually the purpose. So why do we do this? Why do we think in Agile that this is important to do? So pair programming's purpose is, on the one hand, for having a knowledge transfer, and the knowledge transfer actually happens both technology-wise, regarding to the domain or business logic, but actually also in terms of everything we are using. For example, one thing that I have experienced over and over again, that if people start pair programming, then every once in a while somebody says, oh, that's cool, I didn't know that shortcut in the IDE. So it's also how you work with the tools you are working with. However, the main thing, typically what people have in mind, is the technology, knowledge transfer, and